Welcome to the House Rules and Rules and Executive Nominations Committee meeting. It's Monday morning, March 15th. We're going to start with the public hearings with House Bill 725, Delegate Ivy. There he is. Delegate Ivy, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. For the record, Delegate Julian Ivy here presenting House Bill 725. This piece of legislation, as introduced, will require us to have a session for 30 days in June and also another one in October. This came from individuals just kicking around this idea in passing and in conversation of, what would it look like for us to have additional days on the calendar where we're legislating. Specifically, we'd be able to make some adjustments to our budget as we saw the Board of Public Works do this year. So I know that this is a large bill, and typically we take up constitutional amendments during years where we have an election going on. But I did want us to start this conversation, and I'm asking for a favorable report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegate? Let's see. Anybody? Let me see if anybody's raised your hand. I don't see anyone. So
Delegate Healy, this is Delegate Valderrama.
Delegate Valderrama, thank you for speaking up.
Yes, sorry about that, and I apologize since I'm new to the committee. Could you just, Delegate Ivy, what exactly is the constitutional amendment trying to do? I know you said extra days, but I mean, to make it, simply just as extra days, or
Right.
Is there more specificity that I'm missing? And I apologize.
So the legislation explicitly says 2 30-day sessions, one in June, one in October.
Okay. All right.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I got my hand raised.
I see Delegate Beitzel's hand up. Delegate Beitzel?
Yeah, let me unraise my hand. And
I got you.
Okay. Delegate Ivy,
Yes, sir.
just very simplistic, simple question. Don't you think we caused enough damage in 90 days?
No, it's a fair point. I disagree. I think we do some good work while we're down here and giving individuals the opportunity to pass some bills that may stall at the end of session, I think is another positive product of this bill.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Nope. Delegate McComas, it looks like you're waving your hand. I'm not sure if that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, Delegate Ivy, I'm kind of curious as to, I know that some of the bills might run out of time, but I guess really, if we were maybe more efficient, we wouldn't need your bill. So just kind of wondering, because I read the fiscal note and it says it has no idea what the cost is going to be and everything, and the fact that we could be running for 30 days and everything. Really, it's a major change, and I'm just wondering, besides the fact that maybe a couple bills didn't get reached or ran into problems, what other compelling reason would there be for us to go ahead and vote for this?
Sure. I think one of the more compelling rationales is simply to be the body that makes changes to the budget if we need to make changes. Currently, the Board of Public Works, when we're not in session, have a lot of authority that we cede to them because we're not in session. And so that would be the most significant change, I think. So yes, there is a cost with us, a cost associated with us legislating, but I do think that the benefits of us doing this work outweighs the cost associated with it.
Just a follow up, Madam Chair, if I might. Sure. But wouldn't there have to be some other changes to the Constitution and other things implemented because of the Board of Works in other words, an extended session or additional sessions, would that really allow us to do what we needed to do? I mean, do you have an AG opinion on this regarding what other changes might be necessary?
So I don't have an opinion from the Attorney General, but when we're not in session, by default, the Board of Public Works automatically takes up the authority that we give to them due to not being in session, specifically when talking about making changes to the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Riley has her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have a couple issues that I think would need to be addressed before we would pass something like this. First of all, with our primaries being in June, being down here for 30 days, I think that would be a real problem for a lot of, candidates. And also with, the general being in November, with us being down here in October. I think, that would be, major concerns on a lot of, the delegates and senators and other candidates. And the other issue would be, especially June. June is prime time in Annapolis, so lodging would be probably a really big issue here in Annapolis for, Delegate Beisel lives in Garrett County, and there's no way he could ride back and forth, for 30 days. So that would be something else that I think you would have to address. So just to point that out.
Yeah, and Delegate Riley, I completely hear your concerns, very legitimate. These dates and number of days, really just a placeholder for us to have this conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Delegate Riley. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? No, I would like to add just one little bit of historic trivia. The first year I was in the legislature in the 1991, we did have 2 month-long special sessions, one in June and one in September, because the budget was out of balance. And we fell back in to rebalance the budget, not once, but twice, in addition to redistricting. So when it's necessary, it has happened, just for information. It also killed my business. So I was a freelancer and I lost a lot of contracts during that time. Anyway, thank you so much, Delegate Ivy. There is another witness signed up, but it says no testimony. So I'm not sure what to make of this. Is Adiana Britt in the waiting room? No. Okay. Well, in that case, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 725. Thank you, Delegate Ivy.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great one.
The next bill we're taking up is Delegate Saab. It will be House Bill 1031.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. I know this is the bill you've been all waiting for, House Bill 1031. House Bill 1031. For the record, my name is Delegate Sid Saab on behalf of House Bill 31. House Bill 31 actually puts the term limits on the ballot for legislators in Annapolis. Our founding fathers never intended for public office to be a career. What they had in mind was citizen legislators that understand the issues and are in touch with their community. But unfortunately, over the years, many legislators have made it a career. Some will say that election serve as a mean of limiting terms. But as we all know, this is not entirely true because my name recognition and money plays a huge role in getting reelected. We deal with bills that have conflict of interest. And since we don't vote ourselves out of office, the state voters deserve a chance to weigh in on legislative term limits. Let the choice be theirs, just as it is to send us back to Annapolis. A recent poll that was done in the last couple of years at least, shows that 75% of Marylanders approve term limits, while 17% disapprove and 8% were undecided. A poll that I did in my own district around the same time shows 80% supporting term limits for the General Assembly. Our governor is limited to 2 terms. Our county executives are limited to 2 terms. Our county council is limited to 2 terms. The mayor of our great state of capital city of Annapolis is limited to 2 terms. None of them have collapsed as a result, not to mention that many have provided new ideas and direction. The bill suggests 3 4-year term as reasonable. For those who wish to continue as elected officials, they can come back after 4-year break, which would allow them to continue to advocate, serve in other ways, and experience a different perspective. Newly elected members come with passion. They come with drive and fire to accomplish goals and priorities. The new energy, idea, and people give the legislative body a spark. House Bill 1031 addresses the appointment issues and allows incumbents to continue through this election cycle. I respectfully ask that term limits question be on the November ballot, and let's get the voters to decide whether we should come back for more than 12 years at a time. Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Are there any questions for the delegate? Okay, I don't see any. So I believe that the individual, Jill Donnelly, who was signed up to testify, is not in the waiting room. So that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1031. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I understand. The next bill we were going to take was from Delegate Parrott, but he's not in the waiting room, so we will skip over that one and we will go to House Bill 1260, Delegate Malone. Delegate Malone, are you with us?
I am, or at least I hope I am.
Thank you so much. I see you and hear you now. Please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to address the Rules Committee. I once again bring a bill to limit gerrymandering in Maryland. I've brought this same bill several years. Many of you have actually been previous co-sponsors of this bill. House Bill 1260 asks to put before the voters language that would be placed in our Constitution to require that our congressional districts be drawn so that they are of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and be of substantially equal population, and for them to also be drawn so that the natural boundaries and political subdivisions be followed in drawing those districts. If you live here in Maryland, it's hard for you not to know that Maryland has been characterized as having some of the most gerrymandered districts within our nation. I will show you now, and it's a bit challenging, but that is Congressional District 3. Our congressional districts, in particular Congressional District 3 and Congressional District 4, have been characterized as a picture of a Rorschach drawing, a broken wing pterodactyl lying prostrate across the state of Maryland, blood splatter from a crime scene, or the end result of a carving of a Thanksgiving turkey. I don't like having Maryland embarrassed by having such districts, so I've worked to come up with language that would limit this occurring in the future. The language actually comes from our existing Constitution, in which our state lines are drawn pursuant to the same language that appears in Article 3, Section 4. This language has also been reaffirmed by the United States Federal Court from a 3-judge panel, 2 of them appointed by President Obama, which asked for the lines to be drawn so that there be geographic continuity, compactness, regard for natural boundaries, and boundaries of political subdivisions. Once again, with there to be regard to geographic and other communities of interest. Therefore, I ask for a favorable report of House Bill 1260 and to join the majority of Marylanders, including Common Cause, the League of Women Voters, Represent Maryland, the Wise Women of Anne Arundel County, and numerous other organizations that call for there to be the call for the end of gerrymandering in Maryland. It should be noted that in the last election, Virginia, by 66% of their voters, passed legislation for there to be a commission so that gerrymandering would be ended. We have considered language and bills for something like in the form of a Potomac Compact. Well, Virginia has complied with their half. It's now time for us to comply with our half. Once again, I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1260. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions for the delegate, for the sponsor of the bill? Delegate Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate McLaren, for the bill. Could you tell us how many times that Maryland has actually been challenged with their districting process? Do we know?
It's hard to tell you in total, but the most significant challenge was a case called Benesek versus Lamone, and that went to the federal court, and a 3-judge panel, once again, with 2 Obama appointees, actually ruled that I believe it was Congressional District 6, and the one I showed you was Congressional 3, was unconstitutional. It went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, this is a state question. States need to deal with it, which is why I'm putting forth this bill so that states deal with it. Pennsylvania has language which is under the Pennsylvania state constitution, and the Supreme Court has agreed that the Pennsylvania state constitution should be allowed to handle the drawing of their own maps. Therefore, I'm asking for us in Maryland to address this issue and for us to put in with our constitution clear language as far as how the district should be drawn.
Okay, thank you. So you obviously feel that there is just cause to do something like this, a request.
I think there very much is. There's the Pennsylvania case is about a 100-page opinion. If anyone would like, I can easily share it with you, in which it was their Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, ruled that that their districts were unconstitutional. And I'll admit that was a scenario where the Republicans were shortchanging the Democrats, and it was ruled unconstitutional how they were doing it within the Pennsylvania state constitution, and we should have similar language within our own state constitution.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Malone, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any other questions? I don't.
Wait a minute, I got my hand up there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Beitzel, please go ahead.
Delegate Malone, you mentioned that the state court ruled that the Congressional District 6 was not constitutional. It went to court and they kicked it back. So why didn't the state do something when they kicked it back?
Well, it wasn't Maryland State Court. It was the United States District Court for Maryland that ruled that. That was then appealed by the Attorney General of Maryland. It went to the Supreme Court, and the argument was heard, I believe, in March of 2018. I believe the ruling came out in June of 2018. And the United States Supreme Court said this is a political question that the states need to deal with themselves, which is why I'm bringing forth this bill, this state bill, and for it to be placed within our own Maryland Constitution. At that point, if we fail to draw the lines and the governor is charged with drawing the first map, we are then charged with approving or drawing our own map. If we would fail to follow the guidelines set forth within this bill, it could then be challenged in our Maryland State Court. And as I stated, the Pennsylvania State Court was able to make a ruling, and the Supreme Court that did not accept an appeal, did not accept certiorari, and they said basically the state courts can deal with it themselves, and I believe our Court of Appeals could then deal with it ourselves, assuming a map is drawn that's challengeable. I'm hopeful next year that a good map will be drawn and there will be no need for a court action. But this would provide some clear guidelines that the voters would have a chance to vote on to make sure from in the future we continue to draw reasonable and appropriate maps.
Thank you, Delegate Malone. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Are there any other questions? And if I don't see you, please speak up. I see no more questions for the sponsor. We have several witnesses. First is Beth Huffnagel, the League of Women Voters.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm giving testimony to the House, to your committee.
You'll be tied. I'm sorry, you have 2 minutes to testify.
The League of Women Voters of Maryland. The League of Women Voters supports a fair redistricting process and standards that promote fair and effective representation for the entire population of Maryland in the U.S. Congress. Election maps are adjusted every 10 years after the census to account for population shifts and ensure each district has substantially equal populations. However, since 1812, U.S. politicians on both sides of the aisle have also used the redistricting process to provide their party with an advantage in elections for the coming decade. Now, using our current technology, politicians today can achieve this with unprecedented precision. The standards in this bill are the same as those as the Maryland Constitution already applies to legislative districts. We think that they're equally appropriate for congressional districts. Adjoining and compact districts give the voters a much better opportunity to know their representatives and to engage in political discussions. After the 2010 census, 7 additional states, Colorado, Michigan, Missouri, New York, Ohio, Utah, and Virginia, adopted commissions to draw these districts to reduce partisan influence, for a total now of 18 states. Maryland should join them, if not by legislating a commission, at least by strengthening our democracy by setting standards for drawing districts. We urge a favorable report on House Bill 1260, and I wanted to give a personal shout out to my own delegates, Delegate Atterbury and Pendergrass. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you finished? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to take the other 2 witnesses in favor and then questions after that. So we'll go now to Jessica Gorski, please.
Hi, my name is Jess Gorski. I'm with WISE Women Maryland, and also WISE is a member organization of the Maryland Legislative Coalition. I miss seeing all of you. Maybe you don't miss seeing all of us in person, but I'm usually in front of a lot of you at a rotation for healthcare bills. So I am happy to see all of you here. The reason why I'm testifying today in favor of this bill is gerrymandering is something that WISE and the MLC really sees as another form of voter suppression. We went through this, it was really highlighted during the gubernatorial race in 2018 in Georgia. And we just saw this again with so many different forms in 2020 with the presidential race. You know, it's easy to make phone calls out of state, point fingers at other states who may be trying to change rules to not allow people to vote. But how do we turn back around to our own state, which has all these lines that are drawn that they really made no bones about, you know, picking and choosing what districts that they were going to represent. And Sarbanes, and this is nothing against his leadership, or I'm not attacking any representatives personally, wanted to have his hometown along with the area that he currently resides and represents. So then you get all these crazy shapes. I think that anything that allows the politicians to choose who gets to vote for them does not allow people's voices to be heard. And even if it is uncomfortable, if it is something that people are worried about might not have the political outcome or those being elected who they want to be elected, then that is a sign of maybe who's running. You know, there's been several races recently, even in our district, that the people weren't as well funded, and the person who was the better candidate won. And I just think that we shouldn't be doing this through gerrymandering and forcing people voices not to be heard. So I hope that you'll vote in favor for HB 1260 and have Maryland be a leader in this.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, the timer.
No, it's okay. I appreciate it.
All right, we have one more witness and then we can take questions, and that's Charlie Cooper, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and thank you, Delegate Malone, for this bill. I think there's a almost identical bill by Delegate Parrott, and we missed it, but we would endorse that also. I'm Charlie Cooper, representing Get Money Out Maryland, an all-volunteer group that fights for political equality. So the anti-democratic features of our political system, like big money and the Electoral College, are heightening disunity and division in the country to a very dangerous level, as we saw in our recent national nervous breakdown. And gerrymandering is another major factor that creates division and disunity. I'm hoping that the Democratic leadership will decide this time to come down on the side of democracy. What these factors do is they render people's votes completely meaningless. So with the Electoral College, something like 70% of people live in states where their vote doesn't matter for president. So here in Maryland, everybody lives in a district where their vote really doesn't matter very much because, as someone just said, the politicians have picked their voters. And what this means in the big picture is that the parties and the candidates don't compete for voters, they compete for donors. And I know it doesn't feel that way to you all when you're running for office, but if you look at the country from the big perspective, from the bird's eye view, that's the way it's working. And that's why so many people are disaffected. And that's why working people can't get what they want and wealth flows to the tiny, tiny elite. You know, 660 families in this country just got $1.3 trillion richer in the past 10 months. It's not an accident. It's because of these policies and the way our electoral system works. If you vote for this measure, constitutional measure, it won't really take effect till 2032 because it's too late, I believe, to impact the 22 election. So this is the minimum you can do, Democratic leadership. Please, please take this seriously because the country's teetering on the brink. Please issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there questions? I see a question from Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Mr. Cooper. I know he's been working very hard on this ever since he retired because he used to come to the House Judiciary Committee. My question for you is, do you have a website or anything regarding getting the money out of politics that we could view? Because I know that has been a concern of yours for a number of years.
Mr. Cooper? Answer the question? Where'd he go?
All right.
Oh, there.
Our website is getmoneyoutmd.org.
Okay. And you have a lot of the information that kind of backs up your thoughts on this issue?
Yes, most of that website is about the money in politics issue, not this gerrymandering issue. And
Okay.
you know, it's about the system of politicians competing for donors.
Okay.
Donors, a lot of the big donors give to both parties, so they'll get what they want no matter what.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Are there any other questions from the members of the committee? I don't see any. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House
Thank you.
1260. We'll go now. Delegate Parrott has arrived, so we'll go to his bill, which is House Bill 965. Delegate Parrott.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman of the committee. It's great to be with you here this morning. This is House Bill 965. I do have a quick PowerPoint. I don't know if I can share that or not.
I don't know. Don't know. I don't know if we have the technical skills to do that, but
I'll try it one more time.
but we have limited time, however.
Very good. Well, let me just talk about this. Delegate Michael Malone, he just put in a similar bill. And this bill, let me pull it up on my screen here, is House Bill 965. And essentially, it says that Maryland is going to follow for the congressional districts what we already are mandated in the Maryland Constitution to follow for our legislative districts. And our rules in the Maryland Constitution say that each district shall consist of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and of substantially equal population. Due regard shall be given to natural boundaries and boundaries of political subdivisions. Governor Hogan, on his task force to put together the next congressional map, has already told them that they need to follow these rules. And that's consistent with what's happening nationwide. When we look at Pennsylvania, until 2017, they handled their congressional maps just like Maryland does. They said that the congressional maps can basically just have equal population, but that's it. But the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court in 2017 mandated that, no, you can't do that. They need to follow what are in the Constitution for Pennsylvania when they draw the Pennsylvania congressional map, just not when they draw the state maps. And if you look at the two state constitutions, I won't read them both, but they're almost identical, Maryland's and Pennsylvania's. And so if this type of court case had been Maryland, going to Maryland's state Supreme Court, well, we don't have a Supreme Court, Maryland's Court of Appeals, but if it went to Maryland's Court of Appeals and they were consistent, it would be the same ruling as in Pennsylvania. So we wouldn't actually even need this bill, because the courts would rule that we already have to follow what our state constitution says for the districts for Congress as well. And that case went to the US Supreme Court, and they upheld the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, saying, yes, they do need to follow those guidelines. So of course, we know this is important because when we look at the maps from before, they were seriously gerrymandered. Actually, Maryland was made fun of in different publications and Comedy Central. These are nationwide people who are commenting on our maps. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. We need to have some integrity in our maps. And by just passing this bill, we will ensure that, yes, we are going to follow the state standard, not just for state legislative maps, but also for congressional maps. I think we should pass the bill, but honestly, I don't think we have to, because I think according to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, this is already should be the law, and this should be what we're following.
All right, thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions for the sponsor? If not, we'll go to the witnesses. We have 2 witnesses in favor, and then we'll take questions. First will be Greg Decker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, delegates. Greg Decker from Gaithersburg, Maryland. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of House Bill 965. Obviously, this will apply just as well to Delegate Malone's bill 1260 you just presented. I submitted some written testimony. My written testimony consisted of the map of the congressional districts of Maryland. I know you've all seen them. This one emphasizes Congressional District 3. I know we've already referred to that, but if you want to see the map again, it's in my written testimony. It is my written testimony. I mean, it really is a joke. It's an embarrassment. I think it puts Governor Jerry's salamander district to shame. There's really nothing like it that I could see anywhere. The District 3 goes from downtown Annapolis to bumps up against the Inner Harbor or Fort McHenry, parts of Baltimore County, parts of Howard County, all the way over to my neck of the woods, Montgomery County, the city of Olney, bumps up against part of Damascus. It's just ridiculous. Let me just focus on the language in both these bills. Due regard shall be given to natural boundaries and the boundaries of political subdivisions. That's the part that we're most interested in. Now, political subdivisions in Maryland, the top 6 population-wise, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, Howard County. Now, Prince George's County is only represented by 2 congressional districts, but all the rest of those are represented by 3 congressional districts. That's just totally unnecessary. One of the other witnesses was talking about how people are just not represented. Okay, so we know it's a joke. I mean, I live on the border of Congressional District 6 and 8. Now, Congressional District 8 stretches from the district line, Chevy Chase, up to Emmitsburg, the Pennsylvania line. And the other thing about Congressional District 8, there's a number of things throughout the state, but Congressional District 8 takes in Frederick City, goes around Frederick City, but doesn't take Frederick Street. Frederick City goes over into CD6. So it breaks up the political subdivisions. It's just not fair to the voters.
Okay,
So I'd like to
can
see
you
us do
summarize now? We're getting close to your.
Yes, ma'am. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Please look favorably on these 2 bills. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last witness is Diane Waterman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Diana Waterman. I'm president of the Maryland Federation of Republican Women, representing our more than 1,300 members across the entire state of Maryland. Thank you for this opportunity to testify in front of your committee today. I echo pretty much everything that everybody who has come before me has said. Everything I say would also apply to Delegate Malone's Bill 1260. We appreciate a favorable report on either one or both of them for overkill. I will also say it's rare that you find the Republican women, the League of Women Voters, and Wise Women all agreeing on the same issue, but we all agree that having fair redistricting, having congressional and legislative, for that matter, districts that follow these guidelines are vitally important to everyone. Having our districts look like a pterodactyl on its side or an ink splat drawing is not beneficial for any of us. I have submitted written testimony as well, so I will end there saying thank you. We appreciate and hope for a favorable report from all members of this committee showing that this is truly a nonpartisan issue that will benefit all Marylanders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for any of the witnesses? I don't see any. If you want to ask a question, please speak up. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 965.
Thank you.
Go to House Joint Resolution number 5, which is Delegate Acevero. Delegate, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the members of the Rules and Executive Nominations Committee. For the record, Delegate Gabriel Acevero here to present House Joint Resolution 5. Colleagues, this is a reintroduction of a resolution that I put in previous sessions that simply put declares Maryland's support for DC statehood. As you know, this is a matter of democracy, a matter of representation. And what we see is the District of Columbia is not only a jurisdiction that has a higher population than states such as Wyoming, but it pays more in federal taxes. Its citizens serve in our armed military. And despite having legislative power through the council, it is not real autonomy in terms of the city being able to conduct its own affairs without the interference, if you will, of the federal government. And so DC statehood is something that is long overdue. If states like Wyoming can get representation in the Congress, then surely District of Columbia residents are deserving of the same. This is a civil rights, a voting rights, and a democratic issue. We profess to be one of the greatest democracies in human history. And what we're seeing is that a group of Americans are not only disenfranchised, but aren't being represented in the very legislative body that makes laws for our entire country. And so this resolution over the years have been supported by a number of organizations, but also DC elected officials, from Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton to Mayor Muriel Bowser to a number of DC City Council members, as well as DC shadow representatives. And I say shadow representatives because while they do have someone present in Congress, they do not have voting power. They do not have the power that is really afforded to other representatives that represent other congressional districts or jurisdictions, states. And I think it's time that we move on this, and this resolution will simply declare Maryland's support for DC statehood. It calls for the passage of House Resolution 51, sponsored by Eleanor Holmes Norton, and it urges members of Congress to do the right thing by acknowledging that this jurisdiction that is made up of people who, quite frankly, for too long have not gotten representation, have not had their voices heard, that we make that right? That we make that right, and we show the rest of the world that we're not willing to marginalize or disenfranchise any person that lives in our country, and that democracy is one that will be accessible to all, regardless of where they live. So with that, Madam Chair, colleagues, I urge a favorable report, and I thank you all for your time.
Okay, we have a couple of questions, Delegate. Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Delegate Acevero, just a quick question. What is required for the District of Columbia to reach statehood, since you seem to be an expert on this?
Yeah, the passage of House Resolution 51, which is currently in the Congress right now. It has had a number of co-sponsors over the years, and it has grown to even more. So it's in the House. I know the House passed HR 51, and so the Senate did not take it up when it was under a previous leadership, but I know that there are some efforts now to not only get it through the House, but get it to the Senate so that we are not denying District of Columbia residents, really Americans, the opportunity to have a voice in their democracy.
Is there any requirement that if it passes both houses that the president could veto it?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Could the president veto it if it passed both houses?
I can't speak for the White House.
Okay.
As far as the legislative process, the president has veto authority. But again, this is something that I know a number of members of Congress, to include the District of Columbia delegation, has supported, and they recognize as a voting rights issue and really a justice issue.
The other quick question is there any requirement that there then needs to be a referendum from the citizens of DC to approve it as well?
So I think there's been referendums in the past, as well as I think there's been some polling on support for DC statehood, and DC statehood continues to enjoy huge support amongst district residents who would like to see this, because again, as I said earlier, this is about legislative autonomy. This is about the same level of autonomy that Maryland, West Virginia, California, or any other jurisdiction in the United States has, that being extended to District of Columbia residents, Americans, so that they're able to determine what their communities look like, what their representation look like, and I think it's only fair.
Madam Chair, just one other quick question. Well, what if Virginia would accept DC or Maryland would accept DC? That would take care of the problem, wouldn't it? Because then they would have representation in either Virginia or Maryland, correct?
I think on this issue, we should be listening to district residents, and what we've seen from polling is that DC statehood enjoys huge support amongst district residents, as well as other individuals outside of the district and organizations, because people recognize that it's a voting rights issue and it's a justice.
But if they would become part of a state, either Maryland or Virginia, wouldn't they still would have their voting rights at that point?
I think some folks have made the argument for retrocession, but the focus here being on DC statehood, because that is what not only district residents support, but that is what would achieve what it is that you're talking about, which is representation in the Congress, as well as autonomy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Beitzel has a question. Delegate Beitzel?
Yeah, just thank you, Madam Chair. Just one very simple question. Delegate, are there any farms in Washington, DC?
I know there are urban farms.
But are there any dairy cows down there being milked in Washington, DC?
I can't say cows are being milked, but I do know that there are urban farms, yes.
My point is, if you look at the diversity of a state, there's diversity, but there's virtually no diversity. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Delegate. Are there any other questions for the sponsor? If not, I will go to the witness list. We have from the District of Columbia, the Mayor's Special Representative Beverly Perry. Ms. Perry.
Good morning.
There you are. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairwoman Healy and Vice Chairman Holmes, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to appear before this Rules Committee today, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to add the collective voices of 712,000 residents, taxpaying residents, to this issue before your committee. Let me just offer a very special thank you to Delegate Acevedo for uplifting the residents through reintroduction of this resolution. For the record, I'm Beverly Perry. I'm Senior Advisor to Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C., a jurisdiction that operates as a county, a city, and a state. And once again, we are pursuing statehood. We will bring this issue before the Congress. Again, Mayor Bowser and other officials will testify on March 22nd. We will make the case. We feel that we have a strong case. Although we don't have cows and dairy farms, we have satisfied all of the criteria of the Constitution. We feel that we are ready to become a state. We are often reminded, just as one of the members asked, the most pressing issue is, why don't we just go back to Maryland? Now, we've heard the governor say before that we can't come back to Maryland, and Virginia is not an option. The citizens of Maryland and the District of Columbia have collectively moved beyond the approach of supporting. We've moved to supporting an independent state comprised of the area, the residential and commercial areas of Washington, D.C. Adoption of this resolution would finally put that issue to bed about going back to Maryland. This year, in particular, states across the country have introduced resolutions supporting DC statehood. While a couple of states are in opposition, but 9 states have supporting resolutions. Maryland, however, has a stronger interest than any other state. And Washingtonians need our Maryland residents to weigh in. For the record, Washington, D.C. can afford statehood. We are ready for the transition to statehood. And most importantly, the federal government will be occupied where it is now as the federal government. It will continue to have exclusive jurisdiction over the federal sector. It is a civil rights violation, as Delegate Acevera has just so eloquently stated. And we believe that wrong should be corrected. And Washington, D.C. should become the 51st state. So I thank you for taking the time to consider this resolution. We really need Maryland to weigh in, and we really appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perry. Joss Williams is the next witness.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Can you hear me or see me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear and see. Very good. Go for it.
Thank you very much. I've been having a bit of a challenge here with my computer. But I thank you and the committee very much for giving me this opportunity. And I want to thank Delegate Acevera for his leadership on this matter. My name is Justin Williams. I am the past president of the Metropolitan Washington Council of the AFL-CIO. I have been a citizen of this, first generation citizen of this country, and a resident of the District of Columbia for over 50 years. When I took the oath of citizenship for this country, I pledged that I would defend and protect our country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And in return, this country promised me all the rights and privileges of citizenship, including the right to vote. Madam Chair, there was no asterisk on that right to vote. It did not say that if I happen to live in some other jurisdiction, that right would not apply to me. I have kept my end of the bargain with this country. And I am still waiting for this country to keep its end of the bargain and promise that it made to me a full citizenship. As a District of Columbia resident, I pay more federal taxes than many residents of any other state. My co-residents are now waiting for a dream that had been deferred for a long time. I am here today to request that the state of Maryland help us achieve that dream. No American citizenship should be required to live under the conditions that the residents of the District of Columbia live under. Maryland and DC have been inextricably linked as a people and as a government, and we have historically worked together. Our history of collaboration on transportation, the environment, and criminal justice matters is based on your recognition and our recognition of equal treatment and equal respect. A vote for this resolution is a message to the rest of the country that Maryland and the District of Columbia recognize the time has passed, that we here in this district should function as a full state.
Okay.
I personally ask of you.
Can you summarize? I'm sorry. Can you summarize? You're running out of your time limit.
I'll do that, ma'am. If you give me 15 more seconds, I'll do so.
Go for it. 15 seconds. Go.
I ask that the committee report out this resolution favorably. Thank you for affording me this time. I thank you and the committee. Please continue to be safe. The state of Maryland needs you. The country needs you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. The last witness on this bill is Derek Leon Davis from the Prince George's County Council. Welcome, Councilman.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman Haley. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Holmes, and all the members of the House Legislative Committee. I'm here to testify on behalf and support of Joint Resolution 5. And I wanted to thank Delegate Acevero for all of his esteemed effort to move this issue. Many of you know me. I'm council member here in District 6 of Prince George's County, right in the heart of Prince George's County. Our current chair is Calvin Hawkins. He's our council chair. And many of you know Prince George's County Council fully supports the District of Columbia with regard to statehood. I forwarded in my packet 2 resolutions, one from Prince George's County and one from Montgomery County, the 2 most populous jurisdictions in the state of Maryland, who have supported DC statehood for many years and have taken the formal step to do so. I'm also the chairman, immediate past chairman of the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments, vice chair for 2 years, and my last act as chairman was to establish a committee to have the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments support the District of Columbia statehood. We plan to take up a resolution in early April, and by informal poll, the Washington Metropolitan region plans to support DC statehood. Just let you have some facts to consider. First, the District of Columbia is home to more than 700,000 residents, exceeding the population of 2 states and competing with the population of several more. Despite shouldering all the responsibilities of citizenship without statehood, District of Columbia residents are being denied the fundamental right of voting representation in Congress. Taxation without representation.
Can you summarize now, please?
Yes, DC residents pay a federal tax more per capita than any state. And you do have my testimony. 86% of the voters approved state referendum. And one of the most important things that we have to consider is the reality that the Tennessee and Alaska became states of this union via the same process that the District of Columbia is executing. Residents have confirmed their desire to become a state, ratify the Constitution, establish new state boundaries, and committed to a Republican form of government. This is an injustice that we in the state of Maryland can help rectify. And as Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And with that, I would urge my friends and colleagues in the state of Maryland to join with us, the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments, with Montgomery County and supporting District of Columbia statehood. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Delegate McComas has a question for someone on the panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for any of the panelists that can answer the question. So DC doesn't have any state taxes at this point. Like you don't have state income tax. There isn't a property tax. There isn't a business tax. I'm just wondering if you know, you might pay a little bit more in federal, but you don't have all these other taxes. So I'm kind of curious to know, because you've got the city taxes, I'm sure, being a resident, but because you are a municipality, but do you have any, in other words, I'm just kind of wondering if you have, because I mean, we pay income tax in the state of Maryland. They get a chunk of the property tax. So I'm just, and also there's the sales tax and other things. So I'm just kind of wondering if you becoming a state is going to actually increase the tax burden, because you're going to have state taxes and you're going to have a new you know, you're going to have an additional bureaucracy. So I wondered if anybody could share their thoughts on that.
I think Beverly can. Beverly, you're muted.
Thank you. Beverly Perry. Miss Perry, unmute there. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes,
the DC government. You can speak to this.
yes, I can speak to this very well. We pay our taxes. We pay property taxes. I wish you were correct that I didn't have to pay the property taxes that I pay on my home. We pay, and as a matter of fact, we pay a higher rate of taxes because unlike other states, we don't have tax reciprocity with anyone. So we pay higher taxes. We pay, our state income taxes are 8.5%. I think that's probably larger than your county and state taxes combined. So not only do we pay high federal taxes because we have high income earners, but we also pay state taxes, we pay property taxes, we pay sales taxes. We contribute everything. There is nothing that we do that's inconsistent with any other state, or there's nothing that the state of Maryland does that we don't do also. Everything that Maryland does, except farm, we don't farm, but everything else Maryland does, we do it also.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may, to Ms. Perry. Do you receive any funds from the federal government, because the federal government is in the, you know, either for transportation subsidies or any type of subsidies, you know, that you receive from the federal government, because that's the seat of the federal government?
Yes, we receive, Metro receives transportation subsidies, but those subsidies are as much for Maryland and Virginia or as they are for DC. Let me just tell you, 47% of the daily riders of Metro are federal workers, and those workers do not live in Washington, DC. So I could make the argument that that transportation subsidy goes more to Maryland than it does to DC.
Any other questions?
And with respect, and let me just put something else, clear something else up. Everybody thinks that we receive a federal payment different than any other state. We do not. We have a congressional voucher program that's for education that the Congress created, and is sort of, it is a test case that Congress wanted to do, and they can impose that on our schools. They couldn't impose that on your schools, but we have that program, and we have another tag program. But other than that, we don't receive any supplements. We receive money for reimbursement for all of the police protection. January 6th, you know, we had 850 DC police officers go into the Capitol. Yes, we received a reimbursement for that kind of exercise. Maryland officers come down, you receive reimbursement too for loaning us your Maryland officers. So we don't receive anything that any other state does not receive.
And Madam Chair, just to add just 10 seconds that, you know, I know there was a question about farming and I mentioned urban farming. I mean, you know, urban farming is farming, you know, the goal being to deal with food deserts wherever they are. And I would argue there are farms in the district, there are folks who are ensuring that there's sustainable, food, healthy access to food and are ensuring that, you know, communities are fed. So I just want to make sure that folks understand that urban farms are farms and they do address the issue of food deserts.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 5. And we will now turn to House Joint Resolution 6. Delegate Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members
Fisher, I
of.
just want to make an announcement as you start because you have a large number of witnesses. We are going to be timing everyone 2 minutes per witness. You have 4 minutes yourself. Thank you.
Sure, and this just as a housekeeping matter, you're going to call the witnesses because I think they gave you the witnesses in order.
They'll be in the order that they appear that
Okay.
I have on my list. I don't.
Fair enough. No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that so they could hear that. That helps
Yep.
them. So
Absolutely.
great. Well, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Delegate Mark Fisher, presenting HJ 6, which is titled United States Constitution, Amendments, Convention, Limitations on Federal Power. This joint resolution states that the General Assembly applies to the United States Congress for an amendments convention to be called pursuant to Article 5 of the United States Constitution as soon as 2/3 of the states have applied for a convention to propose amendments to the United States Constitution that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for officials of the federal government and for the members of the United States Congress. Delegates to the convention from Maryland may not propose amendments that do not address the goals listed in the joint resolution. The application constitutes a continuing application until at least 2/3 of the legislatures of the states have made application for an equivalently limited amendments convention. That is essentially what the bill does. Currently, the Convention of States in the state of Maryland is not only growing rapidly, but we have 22,000 members and growing, and especially during the past 24 months. But of course, it has been growing over the course of years. I just wanted to say this, we have kind of a who's who from the Convention of States today, all of whom will be testifying, and you will be hearing from them very shortly. I know that this is a busy week for everyone, so I genuinely appreciate your patience. For me, I will tell you that one thing that bothers me about what I see at the federal government, and I can define this pretty succinctly, and that is executive orders, whether it is a Republican that signs executive orders, who's a president of the United States, or a Democrat who signs executive orders. It is to me the equivalent of a decree from the King of England, like from King George III, the very person whom we were trying to get away from. Yet it is indeed a decree without question, and it shouldn't be happening, yet it is. And it is Republicans and Democrats without question, because we see it obviously on both sides, and all of us have. And the other thing that bothers me, and before I turn it over to our incredible panel, is it really bothers me that we have these massive omnibus bills in Congress that deal with 1,000 different subject matters and or 1,000 different line items that deal with spending. I think things would be so much better and more understandable and more transparent for the American people if they could actually vote on each bill individually, whatever that bill may be. So if it's a spending bill that's going to provide foreign aid to a specific country, then that should be a single bill. And yes, there may very well be 1,000 bills that members of Congress have to vote on over a period of 2 weeks. But at least that would be easier to understand and more transparent. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I would like to turn this over to the illustrious panel that we have for you, and I know that you have a list. So thank you.
Thank you very much. First, do any of members of the committee have questions for the sponsor? I don't see anyone.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take these in groups of 5, and then we will take questions at the end of each group of 5. I'm going to announce the first 5, and then we will move forward. There are, I think, 19 witnesses in addition, or 18 or 19. So we'll start with Gail McGowan, then Jacob Goldberg, then Robert Betts, Coley Brown, and Andrew Weaver. So in that order. So Gail McGowan, please. Thank you. We're going to take these in groups of 5, and then we'll take questions at the end of each group of 5. I'm going to announce the first 5. Go ahead.
You ready for Gail? Me?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you to the committee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Gail McCowan, and I am a retired Lieutenant Colonel of the U.S. Army. Service members who take an oath to the Constitution truly understand the meaning of service to something bigger than themselves. This virtue is often lost on career politicians serving in Washington. When politicians are elected, they go to Washington with the greater good of constituents in mind. But over time, citizens' confidence in Congress has been on a rapid decline. The federal government has become much larger than our founding fathers ever intended. New committees, new commissions, new regulations, new policies, new agencies are started on a regular basis. And with each new initiative comes the need for money while creating new solutions to old problems, with my tax dollars going towards federal solutions, when many of these problems could and probably should be solved right here at the state and local level. Why wouldn't we want our Maryland dollars going towards Maryland solutions? During the past 10 years, there has been a paradigm shift towards infringement on constitutional rights to include surveillance of citizens, big government spending, censorship and information, and free speech by big tech. This erosion devalues our Constitution, and if we, the people, can't get our elected officials to work on our behalf, nor hold them accountable, then the check and balance answer is this resolution, Article 5. As a member and leading participant in the Convention of States, Maryland would have the ability to address limitations on this out of control federal overreach. It's very simple. This is a constitutional solution to a constitutional problem. And I hope that you will see this as something that will give the state more power and give it a louder voice through the use of this convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jacob Goldberg.
Hey there, good morning. My name's Jacob Goldberg, and I live in Riverdale Park with my wife, Sarah, and in a few short months, our first child. I've worked as a social studies teacher in the Prince George's County Public School System for almost a decade, and I'm here to support HJ6. Specifically, I wanted to talk to some of the fears that people have about a convention of states. And a common fear tactic used by folks who don't support HJ6 is to claim that it opens the door for a runaway convention. Opponents of convention of states often claim that the delegates at the original Constitutional Convention in 1787 were instructed by the legislature under the Articles of Confederation to hold a convention to fix or alter the government's guiding document, and that the representatives at that convention, instead of altering the articles, just scrapped it and created an entirely new system of government. In my high school civic class, I've explained many times that the whole reason that we had that convention in 1787 was that the legislature set up under the articles was so weak that they could only really make recommendations to the states, not binding legislation like today's Congress, meaning that the convention was not called by the federal government, but by the states themselves. If you weren't familiar, the impetus for that convention in 1787 was actually a small meeting in a place called Mann's Tavern, located just a few blocks from your seats in the Maryland State House. It was there that delegations from several states met to discuss how to improve the federal government. Those delegates decided that we needed a convention of states to address the issue of a failing federal government. While the government under the articles gave a token blessing to this endeavor, it only happened because the state legislatures actually called it by passing resolutions much like the one I'm asking you to support today. Today, we have a similar situation where people are dissatisfied with the federal government, and we know that the federal government cannot solve the problem themselves.
Can you please summarize now?
Absolutely. So that's why I'm here, playing hooky from school this morning to ask you to do what those that came before you did. Support HJ6 and call a convention of states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robert Betts. Mr. Betts, are you here? I see you. You're muted. You need to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go
Okay,
ahead.
good.
Start
Thank you.
now. 2 minutes.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Bob Betts, and I'm the State Information Analyst for the Maryland Convention of States team. As I said when I was here last year, I've been a Maryland resident and a federal employee for 37 years. I said then, and I still am, proud of the work I do, the people I work with, and the organization I work for. I'm here today to address the federal government's overreach of its constitutional power. The recent presidential election is a glaring example of that. The current and previous presidents have extremely different visions for our country. They both put a lot of effort into reversing their predecessors' work, and both did, or still are, dramatically changing America. Both broke their oaths of office in doing that. Other than being commander-in-chief, sharing a short list of responsibilities with the Senate, and a few other things, a president has one primary role. Quoting the Constitution, he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Period. That's it. The president's responsibility is to implement and execute the laws passed by Congress. Executive orders are a tool for doing that, and only that. They don't replace laws, they don't change policy, and they don't affect international relationships. Regardless of your opinion of either administration's action, both presidents and many before them stole power that belonged to Congress. The federal government no longer governs, it rules directly in opposition to what the Constitution allows and in ways the Constitution specifically empowered the states to prevent. It's up to the states to stop federal overreach, restore the Constitution, and reclaim their own power. The Convention of States is how we do that, which is why I'm asking you to support Resolution HJ6. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Coley Brown. Coley Brown.
Hello, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Rules Committee members. I am Coley Brown, a resident of Earlville in Cecil County. I have undergraduate degrees in math and economics and received my MBA in 1972. I'm a Convention of States district captain representing 912 HJ6 supporters in District 36. I'd like to discuss fiscal responsibility, but first, there's a reason HJ6 requests Maryland participate in a debate of 3 constitutional amendments. Without all 3, no single amendment will be effective. Let me explain. A lack of government fiscal restraint and its associated deficits are terminal. In 2020, every taxpaying citizen owes the federal government over $200,000. This shortfall provides the Fed the ability to excess fund 40 of our 50 states. This is the addictive cornerstone of our budget gridlock, and it enables federal financial blackmail. Many Convention of State naysayers argue that fiscal restraint means higher taxes and reduced services. This does not need to be true. HJ6 can restore fiscal responsibility by reducing federal financial overreach. HJ6 combined resolutions can transfer overreaching federal functions back to the states, where all budgets are balanced and there is local accountability. States would retain a portion of their federal tax revenue for the recovered programs. The result will be to eliminate expensive federal departments with balanced and locally accountable state programs. Why should Maryland legislators and citizens want this change? HJ6 and a Convention of States could double Maryland's state budget and give local legislators control over critical state programs. I ask you to move HJ6 out of committee and allow the process to begin. Thank you, committee members and Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Andrew Weaver. Mr. Weaver, you're muted. There you go. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee,
Thank you for hearing our testimonies today. My name is Andrew Weaver. I'm 22 years old, and I came to Maryland with Navy parents who were stationed at the Indian Head Naval Base. At this point, I've been self-employed and worked for small businesses for most of my employment history. Throughout this time, I've seen many small businesses struggling with meeting the regulations placed upon them through the overreach of federal lawmakers. Just one of these examples is the Affordable Care Act. Instead of allowing self-employed Marylanders to choose local health insurance agencies, we're forced to use the options provided by the federal government regarding who we can hire, how many hours they can work, and the healthcare agency we have to buy for them and ourselves. According to the 10th Amendment, all these powers belong to state legislatures like yourselves. And the reason for this is to ensure that Marylanders can make financial decisions that support Marylanders. In addition to this theft of power from the states, Congress continues to exempt itself from following the rules it makes for the rest of us. In the Affordable Care Act, the members of Congress have been granted thousands of dollars every year to ease the burden on them, while Maryland small businesses can't afford to hire an employee full-time due to the cost of meeting these mandates. This and other acts continue to demonstrate that there are indeed two laws, one for Congress, one for the rest of us. For this reason, I've chosen to support the Convention of States Resolution HJ6 and would humbly request that y'all would do the same. One of the goals of this resolution is to restrict the power of the federal government through an amendment to the Constitution protecting the power of state legislatures. Marylanders deserve to be able to debate this on the floor and to make the decision whether or not they are willing to end federal overreach in our state. For this reason, I ask you to support HJ6. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this first group of 5 witnesses? Seeing none, we'll move on to the second group. I'm going to announce them and the order. The next 5 are Steve Shapiro, Paul McElhenney, Nicole Weekly, Michael Riley, and Vince McAvoy. So we'll start with Steve Shapiro. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank
My name
you.
is Steve Shapiro from Columbia, Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. In the late 16th century, after the colonists declared their independence, members of the Continental Congress were not looking to make a career out of federal government. They took time away from farming to serve the people who elected them as representatives, and then the mantle was passed along to other candidates. Today, people earn university degrees to become career politicians and stay in their positions for however long they can survive their re-election campaigns. If only it was just for the desire to serve their constituents. But today we see fighting across the aisles, leaders in both houses that will not allow debate on important issues, bills bundled strategically so as to bargain for policies that could not otherwise make it through on their own merits, and fights over procedure to then inflict action on regular Americans whose voices simply want representation. Term limits should be imposed not only on members of Congress, but also on top-level bureaucrats such as directors of the FBI, CIA, and the IRS, whose policy decisions affect every citizen. Add to that term limits on federal judges and Supreme Court justices who are fallible human beings, many of whom legislate from the bench instead of interpreting the Constitution. Sure, if we pass term limits, I'll miss my favorite representatives when it's time for them to give up their office, but we cannot continue down our current road, which contorts the intent of the framers who gave us the republic we must preserve. So I urge you to pass HJ6. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Paul McElhenney.
Hello, Madam Chairwoman and this committee. Thank you for your time. My name is Paul McElhenney. I am the Convention of States District Captain for District 13. I proudly represent 336 supporters of HJ6, and that number grows daily. I support the Convention of States because I believe our current path as a nation is unsustainable, and also that the best government is local government. With that in mind, I simply want Maryland policies made in Maryland by Marylanders with Maryland money.
I'm simply asking for your support of HJ6 as I believe Washington, D.C. is broken. The federal government is too large and no one seems to know what's going on. Think about every step of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been mixed messages, confusion, or just utter failures around funding, guidance, schools, benefits, and now vaccine rollouts. A decentralized DC would have simply sent this legislature money and allowed you to disperse it as needed. However, that didn't happen and Marylanders are still suffering. Honestly, ask yourselves, what national problems has DC actually solved? Go ahead. I'll wait. Some other great reasons to support HJ6 is that with federal term limits, there will be far more regular vacancies in Congress for new ideas from new representatives and even possibly more rotation on the courts. Also, through limiting federal overreach and imposing fiscal restraints, Maryland money and power will grow exponentially as all of our state departments will naturally expand with only minimal federal government involvement in Maryland affairs. Please use your vote to advance Resolution HJ6 out of committee and to the House floor for debate, as we are not going anywhere and our resolve for these changes is only growing. Finally, I request that if any of you on this committee haven't read my full written testimony, to please do so. It's quite good, and these 2 minutes just didn't do it justice. Thank you again for your time and consideration of HJ6, and I would like you to note that since we have come on for this session, over 100 more people have joined the viewing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Nicole Weekly.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Good morning. My name is Dr. Nicole Weekly. I'm a behavior analyst, a professor, a Marine Corps spouse, and a mom of 4. My maiden name is Jaskew, which is an anglicized version of Yashkeith, and I'm part of the first full generation of my family born here in the United States as my grandparents immigrated from the Ukraine following World War II. Their childhoods played against the backdrop of the Nazi rise across Europe, where everything they held dear was wiped from existence. It's a unique perspective to learn of freedom from those who at one time didn't have it. You're taught that if you take it for granted, you run the risk of losing it. This is a lesson that has only been strengthened through witnessing my husband's experience as a United States Marine. These lessons are why I'm here today. I think that if all of us in this room were to take a step back and honestly assess the current state of affairs, we would all admit to a nagging fear that we're moving dangerously off course. That each side is honestly worried about who resides in the White House or which party controls the House and Senate. That in and of itself speaks to a dangerous level of centralized power that our founding fathers never intended. Certainly, this last year has shown citizens and states alike just how little Washington works for them, as millions of people have lost their jobs and livelihoods while the governing elite in DC and their powerful donors remained well-financed and protected. I joined this bipartisan effort to call for a convention of states because I believe it is our duty as Americans to hold fast the reins on government. History has shown us time and again that when left unchecked, governments grow, heightening the risk for tyrannical results. I believe that states' rights protect against coercive governing. I believe that fiscal health is the foundation of a free nation, and I believe that lifelong ruling at any level of government is left for kings, and we are a nation of public servants. I would love for this committee to move forward this bill for debate, where ideas can be fleshed out and our state is allowed to take a stand for our most precious ideal, preserving the last best hope of freedom in this world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michael Riley.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify in support of HJ6 United States Constitution Amendments Convention. I'm Michael Riley. I live in Durwood, Maryland, and I raised my family in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. I'm a small business owner and federal contractor. I volunteer for Convention of States Action Maryland as the District 19 captain and state communications coordinator. Thank you for taking on the responsibility and difficulties of governing and helping Maryland succeed. Today, I ask you to consider what you need to do as Maryland leaders in the coming rebalancing of federal and state responsibilities. Things that can't continue eventually stop. The federal government is bankrupt, borrowing money we don't have with no plans to repay. What is Maryland going to do? As Texas froze and California burned, we saw finger pointing and failures with both state and federal government. Solutions dreamed up for California and Texas didn't work there. Why should we let others impose them on us here? As legislators, federal impositions affect your daily work. Use our smart, dedicated, innovative Marylanders to help you craft solid local solutions. If you listen, people are saying the federal government is not meeting our needs. This can't continue. So the question for you as Maryland's leaders is how to manage the coming change. Will we carve out hope for Maryland, or will DC dictate our demise? Article 5 of the US Constitution guarantees Maryland a voice. For the equity of Marylanders, I ask that you, our delegates, use the Article 5 guarantee to ensure your voice is heard loud and clear when the inevitable comes. I'm certain Texas, California, and New York will. Please secure your spot in history and support HJ 6 being forwarded from the committee to be considered by the full House. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Next is Vince McAvoy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. I'm so grateful for your time on this bill. I appreciate it. You've already heard the mechanics and the basic premise for the Article 5. The organization is mounting. We're looking at thousands and tens of thousands who are concerned about the financial fate of our state and our country. If we look at how the country was started, it was started on a firmer ground. And I want to bring up something that the sponsor had mentioned regarding this back and forth that we're having in DC, and in which Maryland has really no say on it. The prayer at George Washington's public free laying, I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have the United States in his holy protection. And he goes on to say, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without an humble imitation of whose example in these things, we can never hope to be a happy nation. Amen. There are long-term financial issues that would take us an exceptionally long time to dig through. When we're looking at amendments, for instance, the transgender bill, where we're allowing that into the military, where the previous administration turned it off, and now this administration turned it back on, you're having people who are, they're struggling with where the state and the federal government lies with these things. Such a thing could be handled by an amendment to the Constitution. And I think that for clarity's sake, some of these people, depending on what side you take on these things, they're midstream in their transformation. And they're actually going online to get, I think some of these are scams, but GoFundMe's for their surgery. So we have a disconnect in DC from morality's sake. And I think it's time that Maryland looks to the roots. And I thank you for your time.
Can you summarize? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for this past group of 5 witnesses? I see no one on the committee with questions. So I'm going to go on to the next group, which is in order: James McQueen Sr., Stephen Patton, Richard Bibby, John Goff, and Robert Kelly. So Mr. McQueen, please start.
Just a second, I'm starting my video.
Hello?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak today. I'm James McQueen, Southern Maryland captain for its Convention of States. I was born at Bethesda Naval Hospital and my home is in Calvert County. I'm here to testify for over 2,200 Southern Maryland COS petitioners and the rest of our Maryland citizens. I need to talk about how the federal government infringes on the rights of every state and American citizen. One example is the American Rescue Plan, a $1.9 trillion amount of debt to help Americans recover from COVID-19. Also, don't forget the previous $4 trillion in funds for COVID-19 vaccine, small business relief, direct payments to individuals, pork, and etc. The new American Rescue Plan has only designated 9% directly related to COVID-19. 91% is for the expansion of more uncontrolled programs, pork, and unrelated policy changes. And already on a daily basis, the federal government ships skids of $100 bills to other countries. What happens when the citizens can't afford to pay the debt? Who suffers? Not the millionaires in Congress. We do as seniors, our kids, grandkids, are all stuck in an uncontrollable situation of higher taxes and inflation. Now it's time for Maryland to take the power back and use Article 5 of the Constitution to call a convention of states, impose federal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and the jurisdiction of the federal government, and term limits on Congress and federal officials. We need to secure the future for all Marylanders and American citizens. Thank you for your yes vote on HJ6.
Thank you very much. Stephen Patton. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Awesome. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Steve Patton. Maryland is my home. I have the honor of being the state director of an all-volunteer organization that boasts more than 22,000 supporters here in Maryland. More than 5,000 of those supporters have joined our movement in the past year. We are growing quickly. I'd like to address a reason why we are growing at such a rapid rate. The falsehoods that have been swirling around the Article 5 Convention of States process have been debunked. Yep, debunked. You've heard these objections before. Let's take a quick look at each and the truth behind the myth. First, how do we know how a convention of states will work? Interstate conventions were common during the founding era, and the basic procedures and rules for such conventions were uniform. The historical precedent is plentiful. One just needs to look. Second, the federal government ignores the Constitution now. Why would the federal government adhere to an amended Constitution? Federal officials don't ignore the Constitution so much as they lawyer around it. This is not the Constitution our federal government is following. This is the Constitution they are following. This is the U.S. Constitution Analysis and Interpretation. It is 3,000 pages, weighs over 10 pounds, and serves as the legal authority for everything that the federal government does. The third objection I want to address, the Runaway Convention, also referred to as a con-con. This entire objection is based in the U.S. Constitution having been illegally adopted. The runaway myth reasoning argues that delegates to the Constitutional Convention disobeyed their instructions and that the ratification process was improperly changed. Both of these assertions have been proven false. Again, one just needs to look. We are not here to debate on the merits and objections of an Article 5 Convention of the States. However, I strongly contend there is more than sufficient cause to allow such a debate, and this is why I ask that the members of this committee find HJ6 as favorable so this discussion can move forward. I thank you for your time today and your service to our state.
Thank you very much. Next is Richard Bibby. Mr. Bibby, you're muted. Can you, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Hi.
Yes.
Very good. Fellow Marylanders, I am Rick Bibby, a Leitersburg, Maryland resident and a graduate of the bicentennial class of 1976 from the Parkersburg South High School Patriots. I've been a resident in Washington County since 1991 and a homeowner since 1996 and have American roots dating back to 1620. It is with that in mind that today I rise for myself and over 900 petition signers from District 2 to address those that would object to an Article 5 Convention of States being held. Some will say that we'll be unleashing a Pandora's box upon the country that will destroy everything that has long been held sacred. We stand against that claim, believing that our founders built this Article 5 method that allows for corrections to our future navigation as a bipartisan lifeline to save us from the selfish judgments and stalemated partnerships of the past. If I still believed in my heart of hearts that our elected U.S. and House Senate members would make these changes all on their own, I'd not be here today, but I felt an urgent call for my voice to be heard. That same call was once answered in 1776 by 56 regular citizens with an average age of just 45, of which 2 of those were self-educated men, one a cobbler and one a carpenter. None of those 56 could ever have been called a statesman, yet they found the courage to believe in something bigger than themselves. We now owe the same to the future generations of Americans to use the founders' tools to make the adjustments needed to allow this great experiment in a government of, by, and for the people to live on forever. Our nation needs us now. My simple theory of life is a simple one. It's 1 + 1 = 3. It's not what I do, nor what you do, but when we do it together, we can change the world. And your bipartisan part in saving the country starts right here, right now, by simply voting with the growing groundswell of concerned Marylanders statewide to approve HJ6. Thank you to you and all the hundreds that are watching us on screen right now. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. John Goff.
Good morning. Hear me okay, ma'am?
Thank you. Okay, your name on there is Dave. Okay.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Sorry. First name John, middle name Dave. Go by Dave.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee. Thank you for your service to the citizens of the state of Maryland, and thank you for this time to speak with you this morning. As we just discussed, my name is Dave Goff. I'm a lifetime resident of Maryland, and I've participated in every election at any level in our state that I was able to. Additionally, I'm a retired state law enforcement with 30 years experience who appreciates law and order as well as the rule of law. This is why HJ6 appeals to me. It's the legal process for the citizens to utilize the right granted them by the Creator and memorialized in the Constitution to bring the change at the federal level that our elected and appointed officials choose not to. I believe that our federally elected and appointed officials need term limits that they refuse to pose upon themselves. In a poll conducted by McLaughlin and Associates released in February of 21, 89% of those polled were in favor of term limits for members of Congress and 59% in favor of term limits for Supreme Court justices. I believe a regular purge of sitting legislators is essential to promote new ideas and reduce corruption. The founders of this great country never intended for the federal government to be as large as it is or have the amount of power that it does. That right was reserved for us, the states. Those federal elected positions were never meant to be full-time careers. This country cannot move forward on the stale ideas of politicians embedded in their positions for 40 plus years. I also fear that anyone who holds a position of great power for extended periods becomes more susceptible to corruption. Even the federal prison system understands this issue and requires prison employees to be moved within the system every 3 years to deter abuses of power. Please give HK6 the time it deserves and the opportunity to be debated on the floor. Thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. Robert Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Robert Kelly. I'm here as General Counsel for Convention of States Action. We are a nationwide grassroots nonprofit organization that has over 4.8 million supporters across the country, many of whom you've just heard from here in the state. I don't really think I can improve upon the testimony that they've already given, other than just to emphasize that this piece of legislation is one that enjoys bipartisan support across this country. Majorities of both Republicans and Democrats support this piece of legislation in every state where it's being run. It's currently being run in 20 other states right now, and it has passed in 15 states across this country. The purpose of this legislation is to give people a seat at the table and to be able to speak to their politicians in Washington, D.C. Majorities of both Republicans and Democrats believe that you as state legislatures do a better job representing them than their congressional representatives up in Washington, D.C. And really, that should be no surprise since you are closer to the people that you represent. I encourage all of you to adopt this, to pass this resolution out of committee and to support the will of your constituents here in the state. With that, I open it up to any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this group? I see a hand raised by Delegate McComas.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Mr. Kelly or Mr. Patton. Okay. This is a national effort. What states have signed on to this at this point? I think it was mentioned for this group. States have passed it.
Sure. Yes, Delegate McComas, I'm happy to list out the states. This has been adopted in 15 states so far. Those states are Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Utah, and Tennessee, as well as Texas.
Thank you. The other question I have is, okay, there's been a real concern over the years that an Article 5 convention would not be limited. And as basically, I think there's a concern that we would literally upend and rewrite the Constitution. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think there's no substantial risk of a convention running away or somehow rewriting the Constitution. This application here invokes the article, the legislative authority that this legislature has under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. And Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution specifically says that the legislature has the ability to apply for a convention for proposing amendments. And I think both of those words are critically important to understand. First, the convention only has the ability to propose. That is to say, it's essentially a drafting committee. It can come up with a proposal for limiting the power of the federal government, a proposal for term limits on members of Congress, a proposal for fiscal restraints on the federal government. But what it cannot do is enact any of that. Article 5 explicitly states that 3/4 of the states are required to ratify any proposal that comes out of the convention, which is exactly the same requirement that is imposed on Congress itself. And of course, this is an incredibly high burden. It means merely one house in 13 states could defeat any proposal. So the only kind of proposal that you're ever going to see successfully come out of a convention is one that enjoys overwhelming bipartisan support of the American people. Something like term limits that consistently enjoys 80 to 90%, something like a balanced budget amendment, or something that restrains the ability of the federal government to spend above the revenue that it generates, that enjoys consistently 60 to 70% of the American people, and something that curtails federal abuses of powers in other areas. 67% of the American people believe the federal government is too large and tries to do too much. So those are the types of areas that amendments could reasonably be adopted on. There's no realistic chance of an amendment being adopted in another area.
So let me just, so the mechanics would be that the convention of this, who would select, basically walk through the mechanics of it, like who gets chosen to go to the convention, where was the convention held, and then after the list of bills have been drafted, or the issues have been drafted and submitted to the different legislatures, both houses would have to approve the bill, and then it would be given to the governor to sign it, or what they, in other words, what they approved, the agenda items that they approved. In other words, walk me through the process after the agenda of the Convention of the States has been formalized and drafted to go.
Sure. Certainly, Delegate McComas. So the process begins with the state legislatures adopting resolutions, which do not need to be presented to the governor for signature. Article 5 states that once 2/3 of the states have applied for a convention, then Congress has to call the convention. The convention then takes place. The delegates are appointed by the states according to whatever process they've adopted. That could be the legislatures themselves electing the delegates. That could be the legislatures delegating that authority to the governor of the state, or some combination thereof, perhaps the Speaker of the House or the governor, or some committee that's appointed for that purpose. That is up to the states themselves to adopt procedures for. The convention meets. The delegates are limited to debating on the topics that have been specified in the applications by the states, and then they propose out amendments. Once those amendments are proposed, Congress then decides how those amendments will be ratified, just as it does with any amendments that it proposes. It can choose to have those amendments ratified either by state legislatures, which has been the process used by Congress in every instance except for prohibition, the repeal of prohibition, or it can send it to state ratifying conventions, which are essentially designed to represent the people more fully. Once that proposal is sent out to the state legislative bodies, 3/4 of the states, or 38 states with our current 50-state country, need to ratify before those amendments become part of the Constitution.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I see no other questions from the committee members, so we'll go on to the last group of witnesses. There are 3 left: Michael Colburn, Ginger Barnes, and Leslie Jenkins. Michael Colburn, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, members of the committee. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am a proud Maryland resident and a district captain for the Convention of States, and I represent over 700 Maryland supporters here in District 27. During my 25 years in the Air Force, I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States at least 10 times, and I stand by that oath, and I will stand by that oath until the day I die. While I was in the Air Force, I witnessed firsthand the total disregard for responsible government spending. And the federal government's budgeting process has been broken. It's been broken for a long time. Anyone who has worked there knows this, but the average American does not. What Americans do know is that their federal government spending bills are filled with thousands of pages of egregious levels of pork spending. Meanwhile, the quality of public education and government services has been declining for years, and the Washington establishment has ensured that our taxes go up and that spending on special interests in the bureaucracy grows exponentially. The outrageousness of our federal government's fiscal and monetary policy has put us on a path to destroy not only our economy, but free market capitalism. Both political parties are responsible for this reprehensible mismanagement of our finances that belong to the American people. It is time to put fiscal restraints on the federal government. It is time to limit their power and to impose term limits on Congress and other federal positions. For those reasons, it is time to convene a convention of states to amend the US Constitution. It is time for the Maryland General Assembly to side with the American citizen and vote for the passage of HJ 6. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We have one more witness. The last witness of the day is Ginger Barnes. Leslie Jenkins is not in the waiting room. So, Ms. Barnes.
Good morning. Yes, I was just asked to let you know that Leslie's a 911 operator and she's on a call, so she can't make it today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And good morning. My name is Ginger Barnes, and I'm a retired paramedic and a lifelong resident of St. Mary's County. My family dates back to the founding families that first landed in St. Mary's City. And because of this heritage, I have many concerns that affect the state and our communities. As the federal government continues with its overreach of federal spending, our civil liberties and general welfare, it is clear there are constant threats to our God-given freedoms. Washington continues to display its inability to manage a budget while overspending to the point of mortgaging our children's and grandchildren's futures. They are trampling our First and Second Amendment rights by censoring our speech, censoring our social media, proposing gun reform laws, and continuing to cancel our history. It is, in my opinion, and with your help, the only way we can take back control from career politicians in Washington, D.C. is through constitutional amendments. The states need to take back control now, and you are our only hope in demanding term limits, imposing fiscal restraints, and stopping the growth of the federal government. We, the people of this country, deserve better and expect better from our elected officials. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road and hope for better days. Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution guarantees states an equal voice in the Convention of the States. You can accomplish this by voting for this resolution. We need term limits now. Career politicians have stopped listening to their constituents. Our voices are ignored, and the radical special interest groups are influencing changes to our everyday life. I want better for my family. I want my freedoms preserved. I want my children's futures to remain part of a free and fair republic. I plead with you today to support HJ 6 and move this legislation forward for consideration by the full House. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for these last couple of witnesses? If not, thank you. That concludes the public hearing portion of today's.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We do have other business. We have to vote on a number of recess appointments in our role as a committee on executive nominations. And we also have one late file bill to re-refer and a couple of bills to withdraw. I'm going to ask the vice chairman to make the motions. Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to reappoint, I'm sorry, got tongue-tied here. I move to recommit House Bill 1375 to appropriate committee. And I also make a motion unfavorable for the withdrawal bills HB 1335 and 827. Move the bills, Madam Chair.
Okay, any discussion, debate? Okay, in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please let me know. However you can. Thank you very much. It looks like it's unanimous to me. So those are the bills. We still have a group of recess appointments that has been forwarded to you all. And we need to confirm them so that they can go forward. They're, I believe, having to do with some community college, or I have to look at it myself, but I think Delegate Holmes has the list.
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, it's the Chesapeake College Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, to move favorably the governor's recess appointments.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. That does now conclude the business for today. I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon. Thank you very much.